Hey, you found us, and we appreciate that. Today we're going to talk about the CrossFit swing. What is it? Should you do it? And why would anybody do it? And most importantly, do we do it? All right, so stick around and find out more. Roger? Roger? Oh, here he is. Hey, so the CrossFit swing, we all know what it is.
Do it.
If you don't know, here it is. AKA maybe it's they call it the American kettlebell swing. I don't know. I don't want to categorize by country.
So the question we got specifically was something along the lines of why do they do that?
Or what are our thoughts on the CrossFit swing?
Yeah,
Somewhere, it was kind of vague, but we got it.
So I think the important thing is to underpin this with how we approach kettlebell training. The tendency is to bash on this thing, especially within the hardstyle community or every other kettlebell community, unless you're CrossFitting. That just doesn't make sense to us. We don't do that sort of thing. So what we want to do is let's go through a couple things that people say is no good about the swing in particular. There are two common arguments that I think both are invalid. We'll go over those and we'll talk about why. And then we'll look at what the swing does and what the swing doesn't do. If you look at a swing and if you understand the properties, if you understand what has to be happening, how the force is generated, et cetera, then you don't need to think in terms of good or bad. It's, do you need that sort of force or not?
Right.
It's a simple thing. So, judgments in exercise often get in the way of understanding value, and they get in the way of really thinking thoughtfully about this stuff. So the first thing, so let's go into that arm overhead position. You don't need the kettlebell. So common argument against the swing.
Is my belly button showing?
Almost.
Is my arm hair poking out?
A little bit.
It's because I rolled my sleeve.
That's natural. You can put your arms down. You're embarrassing both of us. So one common argument against the CrossFit or the American swing is that it puts the arms into internal rotation, which isn't healthy. Now, whether it puts the arms into internal or external rotation, you don't know. You have no idea. That really is about the position or the relationship of the scapula and the humerus, so the glenohumeral joint. You don't know whether there's internal rotation or external rotation going on.
That's where it sits and stuff.
Yeah, there's some really complicated factors. So to look at anatomy that way, you're really kind of missing the bigger picture. Second thing is there's nothing inherently wrong with internal rotation. A lot of people don't have internal rotation and they need internal rotation. So as a fitness industry, we have some biases against spinal flexion, against hip flexion. External rotation is good, internal rotation is bad. And it doesn't track, it doesn't make sense. What is good is having enough of what you need.
Right. So was all that all stemmed from, I don't know, it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago when the upper cross syndrome was the big thing and we were so sedentary in our desk. And if you're obviously like this, doing a move that pretended you were in that position is bad.
And that's not necessarily it's not necessarily wrong or a bad way to start, but when you're getting into analyzing joint movements and what's actually going on, it's just a much more complicated picture. So to assume that you always want to ER the hip, you always want to ER the shoulder, we really get ourselves into some kind of shady position. So if you stand here and go into, so one thing that this is really promoted, especially in the exercise community, is, and again, this is not the work that people have done. This is the interpretation of that work. But because everyone is like, oh, spinal flexion is bad, you get a lot of extended people, shoulders externally rotated. Every time you do a squat, you gotta pull the knees out, and that's not necessarily good. You want to put yourself in a position that you need to be in. So there's no inherent this is good and that's bad. That just doesn't track.
I feel like Michael Hutchins or Scott Weiland like this. Like I feel like that's how they walk around and sing.
Is that a pop culture reference?
I guess I could say like Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger.
Okay. Sorry. Back to the swing.
Sorry, I had to see that. So another bias is based on the nature of the swing, and we'll get into this a little bit. It tends to be a bit more squatty. So, I have no problem with people saying, I like to train a hinge-based swing, or, I like to use more hip. I like to emphasize that hip dominant aspect of it. Totally cool. But there's nothing inherently wrong with the squat style swing. So the common argument you get is that it's bad for your back. It's bad for your back the way people demonstrate it. So people will come down from the swing and they'll show the arms here. Okay, that's bad for your back. But if you look at what you need to keep your back protected, it's this. So whether you are going down and you're going squatty, or whether you're going hingy, if you have your arms connected, you have a combined center of mass, you're not going to get the position that people are afraid of. So there's nothing inherently bad or dangerous about the position if you were maintaining your form points. Again, I think the hip dominant swing is the one I like. It's more beneficial. It's more beneficial for a lot of people,
right,
but not every scenario. So those are the two big knocks against it. So let's actually look at the phases of it. There is a dead spot. So go through and do your regular swing. Once we get to here, past this float, the only thing that is going to keep this bell going up is the motion that you've already generated. Okay, so from here to here, we might get a little bit of an arm swing, a little bit of an arm raise rather, to get the bell from here to here, but you're not going to be able to get a ton of that. So the force above here out that far is largely going to be, I don't know if wasted is the right word, but it's not going to be very effective. You're not really generating, you need to generate force up to here, because after this, the kettlebell's not really heavy anymore. Most of the force that you're generating really is right about there. So you're generating force there. Once it hits right about there, you're pretty much done. And the force comes up to here, you've done your work, but the American swing will go all the way up there. Now, this range from here to here with this long arm, that is, if you turn to the side, you've got this big moment arm here. So the ability of the bell to produce force against the arm here is much greater than, let's say, here. And if you were to do one arm here, so go ahead and put there we go. This looks an awful lot like a snatch, okay? So the reason why the hardstyle community doesn't do the American swing is because we generate enough force to get to here. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what we need. Above that, if we want to keep going, we'll switch the exercise. We'll switch the exercise. Exactly right. We'll make the moment arm shorter and probably a little bit safer, because in a lot of cases, when you do that American swing and the bell's way up there, it wants to kind of bobble. People don't get complete lockout. So you have this really great force production, and then from here to here, there's nothing really happening.
Yeah, and I think too, and I don't do these regularly, but just doing a few to prep for this video, if you're not really hanging on, you could sit there and you could hold it straight up over your head, two hands, no problem. If you're not really hanging on, it's going to flop all around, and the tendency is to just keep going.
Yeah.
So that could present a bit of a problem.
So you do have to, when you look at where you're really generating force, you will have to go much lighter. The hardstyle swing is going to allow much more load. I don't see people with hardstyle, you get an experienced coach, 48 kilo swings, no big deal.
Yeah, one arms.
But you're not going to be able to do that overhead.
No.
So the amount of the bell is going to need to be much lighter. It's going to need to be much lighter, especially once you get above there, okay? Because then you're going to have an element of danger. So you're not really producing force there. Whereas hardstyle, if you're go ahead and do a snatch. So in that scenario, you have the bell moving quickly and aggressively all the way into that overhead position, rather than kind of having that dead zone.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I like to point out with the swing in general is I like to have my people swing to here. Now, there's nothing wrong if people need to do this. People need to bend, okay? Nothing wrong with that. Or even sometimes, the T-Rex swing, has a purpose. But when you swing to the same spot every time, you know you've got a full rep. Okay. Now, one thing that the American swing may have for it is a full
it's very
cycle.
easy to see where the top is.
Lockout, no lockout. So what we're really looking at is the line of force. Also, the way the bell needs to work. So because we have the long arm in that American swing, people are more likely as they're coming down to keep it close, and they're not going to get as hingy. They're going to get squattier. Now, when we look at the squat style swing, what advantage it may have, again, I'm not necessarily advocating the American swing for this, but a squat style swing may make it, if you believe in this sort of transfer to sport sort of thing, go ahead and get into your regular hard style swing, get into the bottom. You don't need to swing, but get into the bottom, turn to the side so people can see. Okay, this is an athletic position in some cases. You're exercising things that you need, but this is not a position that athletics usually uses. That's a lot more athletic.
Like Little League all of a sudden.
That's a lot more athletic, having your eyes up, your chest up. So there may be some advantages in doing the squat style swing. But I think to wrap it up, it's not a good or it's not a bad. It's not inherently dangerous to a lot of people. A lot of the hard style coaches that say, "Oh, this is bad for your shoulder." The snatch is going to have the same requirements in a lot of cases. Now the difference they'll say is, well, you have two hands fixed on a smaller handle, which is true.
And even if you get like a competition belt in the mix, it's even smaller handle, so it might be.
So you can run into problems, but again, I don't think we can find potential issues with every kettlebell skill out there.
Yeah.
So it really is about, does it match the body? So the internal rotation thing, I don't buy. The squat style swing inherently being bad, I don't buy. We do want to be, the biggest difference is going to be that big dead zone above here. So it's going to limit the amount of load that you can use. And your force production is not going to be constant. So if you're trying to train power, the American swing is, I don't think, your best choice.
Right.
Your regular hard style swing or your Russian swing is going to get, boom, power generation up to the level of the float. Then you're going to get that next cycle. You're going to be able to get a lot more work done in a shorter time, because if you were to time the American swing versus the Russian swing,
all this area, and still to get back.
Yeah. So it's, I think the idea maybe with the American swing more is better. But the question is, what are you really doing? And the answer is nothing. Okay, you're not doing anything in this zone.
Like, except for maybe, just being in the exercise longer, I suppose. Maybe if you're like an endurance thing, or I don't know, that could be a reason. But
there, you're going to see this trade-off between the load you can use, and the range of motion. So, in a lot of cases, you may need to drop the load, cut the load by half in order to do the American swing. Whereas if I'm working out for an objective and I'm training power, then power is about work. How much work am I doing in what amount of time? Right. So when you take the Russian swing and the American swing head to head, the amount of work that you generate, the amount of power that you generate is going to be significantly greater with the hard style swing. No question about that. So, rather than saying, is this good or is this bad, look at what you need. And the reality is, if you're a CrossFitter and people tell you to do an American swing, you do an American swing.
Yeah.
and
you've made that choice already.
If you want to compete, if you love everything about CrossFit, but you don't like that swing, you got no choice.
Yeah.
So,
and in the end, at least you're holding the kettlebell and you're exercising, I suppose, right?
So look, it's all about understanding what it does and doesn't do. So thinking in terms of good or bad doesn't really serve you. And when you have these questions, start feeling into, well, what are really the essential differences? And what do those differences do to the body? Because a lot has to change to get a kettlebell overhead with straight arms versus getting a kettlebell up to here. And a lot of the longer lever stuff, a lot of that stuff is done by GS Sport, which is awesome stuff, but they also have another whole subset of things. So rather than saying this is good or that's good, this is bad, that's bad, look at the demands of the movement and what needs to change to facilitate the objective.
Cool. Well, I hope that helps in your decision. Remember, if you're going to do CrossFit, then you might end up doing those American swings. If you're doing hardstyle, I almost guarantee it's going to be a Russian swing every time. Either way, how does it serve you, and is it beneficial? And does it cause pain? I suppose. Don't be hurting yourself.
Yeah, that's fair.
Don't drop that bell on your head. Anything else?
No, I think we're good.
All right, sweet. Hey, if you have any questions or you have any comments, leave them below. We're happy to address anything. If you think that the American swing is far superior because it's America, I don't know what to tell you. This is just life, all right? We just living. All right, anyways, stay strong. Yeah.